So it seems we may actually be live with another panel for Onyx Path Virtual Gaming Convention 2022. That's Onyx Path Con 2022 for short, or Onyx Path Con even shorter, OPP Con shorter than that. And you can reduce it pretty far. But the important thing is this is the They Came From panel, as the name of this Twitch stream should indicate. If you're watching this after the fact and it's been transferred over to YouTube, well, good for you. But right now we're live on Twitch. There's some people who have decided to tune in live. It's very early in America right now to watch all of us Europeans talk about They Came From. You'll note that I'm often very crafty about constructing my teams of people in quite close time zones to myself, and what that results in is streams like this where we have a bunch of people in Britain and one a little farther out in central southern Europe. But we will get to that. The first thing I wanted to do is say thank you very much for tuning in, not only for your support of the convention, but also hopefully for your enthusiasm for They Came From. I think it doesn't go without saying because I'm about to say it, but They Came From is a very important game line to me. And we were just talking before we went live about how much we all enjoy working on it. I promise I'm not putting their feet to the coals to make them say that. And when we get feedback from you, our fans, our customers, our role players who love these games as well, it really does make it worthwhile. It's incredibly gratifying. We love it. So as I always say in every video, please rate and review the games you buy. It really does help draw more eyes to them. Next up, obviously, this is Onyx Path Con. So while we have a fantastic array of panels, announcements, teasers, all kinds of things going on in that venue, we also have a huge number of games being run too. It is not too late, by no means is it too late, to go over to the Onyx Path Con website on Start Playing. You go on Start Playing, you look up Onyx Path, you will see a good range of games that still have some slots in them. So if you have a spare 2 or 3 hours in your weekend, whether it's in the afternoon, the evening, whenever, feel free, please feel invited to play in games you wouldn't normally have a chance to participate in. It may well be that you're camera shy, a lot of people are, that's fine. The vast majority of these games, in fact, I'd estimate all of them, are not on camera. They're not being streamed. These are games being run by people who know the games or are trying to learn them just like you will be. So this is just a really fine time to try something out that's new, like we do when we go to in-person conventions, and all these games are there. Last thing I will say on the matter, and then we'll get into the meat of this, I'll introduce my co-panelists, is there is a financial aspect to this convention, but it's only when you're paying to play a game. Now, don't feel like this is money that's going in our pockets at Onyx Path. It isn't. Absolutely. Who has their phone on right now? Out of the classroom. No, I'm joking. That 50%, 50, that's what this is going to represent here. 50% of the figure that you are putting down to participate in a game goes to the GM. So the people who are running, we're not asking them to do it so much. We're not paying them to do it. They're running this off their own back, and 50% of the money you put in is going to them. 40% of that money is going to the Bodhana Group, our nominated charity, a non-profit organization that uses TTRPGs as therapeutic tools. They're all fully qualified. They are a fantastic group. We often partner with them. 10% of it goes to Start Playing because they're hosting the whole thing, all of the games we're advertising. So it's a good use of your money. It isn't going to waste. I really encourage it. So with all that said, thank you very much for the near 5-minute spiel at the beginning. You likely already know who I am, Matthew Dawkins. You may not know who all of my co-hosts are, but they are all fantastic creators in their own right, both within and outside of Onyx Path Publishing. I'm going to go through them as I can see them on my screen. It may not be on the same order for you. And they can give you a bit of an introduction to themselves, what they've worked on for Onyx Path, some of their projects, because they've all worked on quite a few, and some of the projects outside if they want to advertise them. So let's go to Kat first. Kat, who on earth are you?
What I'm the weird Welsh one. I am a freelance writer and I've written for They Came From, obviously. I did the jumpstart for They Came From Beyond the Grave, in which you can face satanic nuns and the devil himself. I wrote an adventure for They Came From Classified, and then for some absolutely unknown reason, Matthew decided that I should teach people how to tell stories in They Came From the Cyclops Cave. When I'm not busy with They Came From, I write lots and lots of World of Darkness stuff, also for Onyx Path, and some Story Path stuff for Onyx Path. And then when I should be sleeping or eating or generally living a life outside role-playing games, I run Ecstasis Games, where I make silly, spooky indie horror games.
Thank you very much, Kat. And also, if I was wearing my sailor's cap on this session, I guess I could. I'd be tipping it to you right now because The Haunting of Abbey and Priory, or Priorium Abbey, as it's sometimes known in my gaming group, is probably the most popular jumpstart I have ever been involved in. It gets so much acclaim. This is how They Came From Beyond the Grave jumpstart. I may even have a copy of it to hand. Yeah, I do actually. There we go. You can probably see it. It's a wonderful book. Not only does it look beautiful, it reads fantastic. It's a fantastic introduction to They Came From. There we go. Michele's showing it off as well. And yeah, your work on it was stellar. As your work always is. But Kat isn't the only person here. We are also joined, as I've just mentioned him, by Michele Marsala. Who are you, Michele?
Hello, everyone. I am Michele. I am I guess, the Italian one. I worked on. I started working on They Came From line with Heroes in a World of Horror, where I made some characters and some new archetypes. And it was a line I loved, and I'm glad that went well, because since then I wrote a scenario for They Came From Classified and also the system chapters. I pitched and developed alongside Matthew They Came From the Cyclops Cave. I think I can say I'm also working on They Came From the Danger Zone.
Indeed.
I put my hooks into this game. I'm refusing to let it go. Outside from that, I work on Mummy the Curse second edition, on Werewolf for the Apocalyptic Record, and I'm also a writer for. I just started writing for Scion and the Trinity Continuum. Outside of that, not much, because I'm mostly part of the Onyx Path team. I can say I kind of wrote an unofficial They Came From line on the Story Path Nexus. They Came From the North Pole. That's Christmas movies, Santa, and that.
It is a fantastic book. To my heart, Michele, it is official. Officially, it isn't, but for me, it is. So I'm a great fan of your work, as you know, and They Came From the Cyclops' Cave would not be the game that it is without you. It is a stellar fantasy movie game, and we'll be going into each of the They Came Froms as this panel goes on. But I think the vast majority of the credit for that can go to Michele over me. So yeah, all kudos to you. But there is another lurking in the shadows, waiting to bellow his name. You may know who he is, and if you don't, you very shortly will. John, who are you?
John Mark! Okay, just because you said I was going to bellow my name. So yeah, I am the person that is whose name I just shouted. And I'm not from Wales or Italy. I'm from Scotland. Clearly, we have all the nations of the UK covered. We obviously could not afford a Northern Irish person to come in.
They charge higher rates.
They do. They're just they're expert negotiators. I have worked on. Well, it's actually easier to tell you what They Came From as I haven't worked on, which is a bone of utmost contention, and everyone who has not hired me for a They Came From book will be summarily executed later in time when I get my hands on them. So I've worked on everything except Classified in Cyclops' Cave, I believe.
Yeah.
And of course, unlike Michele here, anything that I write will be considered canon by Matthew, in the sense that you put it into a large gun and fire it at the sun. So yeah, I've also worked on Vampire mostly, I would say. A lot of stuff for 5th edition, including Cults of the Blood Gods, including Chicago by Night. And on the team of Chicago, hello to Mike Tomasek, Onyx Path alumnus. or veteran or whatever. What should we call him? He's got a Purple Heart now because he's wounded in action. So hello to him, and I hope you get better soon. And that's all I have to say for now.
And I'll also qualify John a little more by saying of everyone here, he's the person I've worked with the longest. I think John came on board for Beneath the Sea. So yeah, it's been a long old road, John. And now we're back together again on They Came from the Danger Zone. I'm not ready to take you out the back of the chemical sheds just yet and say goodnight, Irene. But let's give it time. We'll see what happens at the end of this panel. So I'm already seeing that we're getting questions from people, and this is going to be pretty loose. We have something of an agenda, some talking points that we want to cover, but we also want to keep active with the viewers. So any questions that you might have, please do throw them our way. I will do my best to pitch them to the other panelists. I'm not going to rely on all of them to keep watching Twitch, but we will also cover some hefty topics, some weighty topics, because They Came From is a very weighty game. So let's see. I've got a question here from Zach. How are you all doing today? That's a nice, indeed, meaningful question. I'm just going to ask Michaeli that.
Yes, because Matthew asked before, and I replied, "We're alive," so that's good.
And that is good compared to the opposite. So there we go. I wanted to point out that Erdith said of Cat's haunting of Abbey and Priory, it felt like an unproduced Italian-British horror film from the 1970s, which honestly was the remit. So
For once, I hit the brief. Hell.
And not too far over word count either. So, yeah. Here's one for all of us. Meredith, the wonderful Meredith Gerber, asks, what one emphasized piece of media was your biggest influence in your writing? So let's treat this for all They Came From. So obviously, we've all covered a number of genres across our array of books, but I'll start on this one and say that the biggest inspiration for me to make They Came From Beneath the Sea was Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which doesn't have an obvious link because it's not a maritime horror thing, but it was the idea of playing something with deliberately cheap sets, deliberately wooden acting, parodying, but in an affectionate way, the genre that you were pulling from. It's also what spawned quips, because the one-liners from Garth Marenghi's Dark Place I was using in another game called All Flesh Must Be Dark Place. It was an extension of All Flesh Must Be Eaten. And you had lines from all of the characters in that on your character sheets that you could use to get bonus dice, that sort of thing. And that all ended up morphing into what They Came From Beneath the Sea became. How about you, John? What has been the one piece of media that's been the biggest influence for you?
In terms of They Came From, probably Larry Blamire's Lost Skeleton of Cadavra. For me, it captured everything that was sort of seminal about this sort of genre of books. It's also hilarious. So, well worth a watch for anyone that want to get involved.
And Kat?
It's not even a piece of media. It's a meme. Take any movie, keep one character, replace the rest with Muppets. That's how I write They Came From.
And what about you, Michaeli?
For Beyond the Grave, I think it was the show Penny Dreadful. You can see that in my work in Heroes and World of Horror. Classified, I went with Austin Powers. While I think for Danger Zone, it's probably the Terminator vibes, but you'll see why. And for Cyclops Escape, it's difficult there for me. I'll say that Clash of the Titans and Jason and the Argonauts started the idea, and then everything else followed.
So not one answer, but multiple for Michaeli. And I will actually add to that, in terms of Classified, it's interesting. I've observed a lot of people running Classified now and playing it. And more than any other they came from, I can very easily identify the source of inspiration for a director or player of Classified. Some people are very Bond-like, others are very Austin Powers-like, some do take it very seriously and play it, I guess, Bourne-like. But when I do it, it's very The Avengers, like the John Steed, Emma Peel. I've got a very clear 1960s view of what this is, complete with the camp that goes with it. I very rarely drift into ultra serious spy movies, but I was just got done finishing a Classified game I was playing with one of my friends. She was running it, and it turned into something that was incredibly John le Carré, Tinker Tailor like. We started off incredibly camp and silly, and the deeper we got into the plot, the more, oh, this is the kind of thing that's world changing. There's characters with stakes and personalities, things they might lose, and all of a sudden we cared. And I think that's one of the great things about They Came From. A lot of people see it through the prism of this is great for one shots, but as soon as you start playing it in campaign form, the game really evolves for the different approaches you might take to it, the different ways you might present villains, the different ways you might use cinematics, and so on and so forth. But before I go back to the Q&A, because I see lots of people posing questions and I can't just do Q&A, let's talk a little about that. Let's talk about a big topic, how we make They Came From feel cinematic. So it's a phrase I've recently started using, the idea that these are cinematic role-playing games. Because just classing them as comedy role-playing games didn't really seem to tell the truth about them. And I consider them more cinematic than anything else. And so I'll look to Michaeli first as one of my co-developers. How do you make a They Came From game feel cinematic at the table, through your writing, through the powers that are present? What can make that different than, let's say, a role-playing game that doesn't have that cinematic edge?
I think it all starts even before getting into the page, either with the lore or the mechanics, by recognizing the moments in the genre you're covering that are memorable, that are the cinematic experience people have while watching the movies that inspire us. So you try to deliver that feeling in the way you write stuff, and of course, by giving people beats and powers that are useful to replicate the elements of the movies people really remember. I think that's the core of the cinematic experience.
Well, and John, another aspect, a key aspect of They Came From is, of course, the humor. And as Ray Liotta, dearly departed, might have said, you're a funny guy. But how do you, John, someone who is very confident writing humor, writing, if I dare say so, I think you come across as a very confident comedy writer. How do you do that without essentially prescribing humor? You know, how do you do it without clubbing someone over the head and saying, this is funny? Because obviously everyone has a different receptor to what is amusing. So how do you do it, John? What's your secret?
I think the core part of doing something like that is always the sort of toolbox, not prescription approach. So you're sort of, I don't know, what I try to do is create situations which are inherently funny. So like Father Ted is a good example of that, right? Father Ted isn't, if you just read a Father Ted script, it's not very funny, right? It's just people saying things, everyday things. It's the situations that are funny. That's where the humor is found. And depending on who you are, that can be different. So what you're trying to do is give people the tools to be funny, right? Because presumably around their table, they will have a better idea of what's hilarious. And where the humor can be found. And to be honest, when I've been running They Came From, I always find it's quite natural. People just start laughing at things. just through the sheer sort of ridiculousness of it. I almost see it, I mean, touching on the question that was asked before about inspirational media, as you were talking earlier, one of the things I thought about was Blackadder, because what it does is it touches on sometimes very serious subjects and sometimes things that are actually like, I mean, Goes Forth's a great example of that final episode that everyone always talks about, where you're dealing with a sort of worsening situation, which gets progressively more serious as the series goes on, but the humour's still there and the ridiculousness of humanity, and a bit like Terry Pratchett, stuff like that. Just fight. There's humour in the mundane and things that everyone recognises. Billy Connolly's the master of that, and just saying, here's a thing that happened, and everyone falls about laughing. And I think there's a very, without trying to be too sort of patriotic, there's a very Scottish sort of thing about that, and kind of going, that's a bit silly, isn't it? And sort of finding, because it's so rubbish up here, we have to find comedy wherever we can. So yeah, I think it's about just giving people the situations, giving people the tools to find their own humour, and then letting them have fun. And that's, to me, the core of They Came From, is that it's a fun game. And that's the one thing I always tell people that ask me about it.
Okay, and well, I'd like to, I guess, build on that question a little for Kat, because if I can put a hypothetical situation in front of you, Kat, that you're at a table, you're supposed to be running They Came From, let's say it's a convention, and you don't know what this audience's comedy levels are going to be or how confident they are. And so, Kat, you are an experienced story guide, director. You know how to run a game. But you're not expecting these people to read the game. You're presenting it instead in a way where hopefully you become someone that can entertain all of them. But how do you make that connection from the material to the players at the table? It's a weighty one, it's a lofty question, but I'm wondering if you might have some advice for any aspiring directors out there.
Well, I hope you're not expecting anything too clever, because you don't actually have to do any work to make They Came From funny, right? Role-playing groups tend towards comedy anyway. When people are nervous, when they're on edge, when they're excited, when they don't quite know how to respond to something, they make it funny. If anybody can think of like a super serious role-playing game session that wasn't totally derailed when someone pronounced something wrong, or somebody's character did a pratfall. Maybe that's just my groups, but that's a weirdly common occurrence. Role-playing tends towards comedy, and what They Came From does is give you tools to direct that natural tendency in a certain direction by giving people quips and cinematics, and lovingly presenting people with the tropes of a specific genre. You get a certain type of comedy rather than just the usual kind of nervous absurdism, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So well, that's actually I wasn't expecting that answer, and so now I've got something to think on. But that's the best kind of answer, I guess. Before I go back into the agenda, one thing I wanted to cover with the audience, in case anyone was unfamiliar, is we have, what is it now? 4 core game lines for They Came From. We've got Beneath the Sea, so that's 1950s B-movies, sci-fi. Not exclusively from under the water. I'm going to emphasize this now because in every panel we've ever done for They Came From, someone says, when are you going to do They Came From Outer Space? And not only does that product exist, it's on Drive Through RPG, it's a source book for Beneath the Sea. Beneath the Sea is a game deliberately built for alien invasions. It just so happens that the title is situated from a maritime perspective. You can have Centipus drop down from the moon if you really want, but more likely you can have your glowing people. They're not restricted to underwater shenanigans. So yes, you've got 1950s B-movies in the form of Beneath the Sea. You've got They Came From Beyond the Grave, which is 1960s, 1970s horror. in the form of Hammer, Amicus, lots of Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, Britt Eklund. You know, you've got a bit of Wicker Man in there. You know, you can go folk horror like. I think we've got 2 scenarios in Tales of Depravity that just came out for Beyond the Grave that have a very isolated village, Midwich Cuckoo, the Village of the Damned, Wicker Man. You're isolated and everyone is a bit creepy here, kind of thing going on. But that's also very strongly linked to Tales from the Crypts, those portmanteau movies where you get multiple horror tales told to you. Then we have Classified. They came from Classified in all caps, which is our espionage movies, spy thrillers, ranging all the way from the camp of Carry On Spying. That's a movie that I can say to a British audience, you probably know what it is. Anyone outside of Britain, probably not. All the way through to Deadly Serious Daniel Craig as Bond, if you so wish. And we also have They Came from the Cyclops' Cave, number 4. Which is our fantasy movies, ranging all the way from Harryhausen style, Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts, Sinbad, through to Hercules and Xena in the mid-90s, with sword and sorcery firmly in the middle there, with lots of 1980s, showers of gore, great big swords, Conan, Sword and the Sorcerer, Krull, Hawk the Slayer, that kind of thing. Now, secondary to them, we also have They Came from Camp Murder Lake, which is a weighty source book for Beyond the Grave. It's a big one. And not only does it, there we go, we'll all start holding these things up. Those are, yeah, there. In many ways, my favorite of the They Came Froms, not that I should have a favorite, but Camp Murder Lake, as the name implies, is 1980s slasher movies and other horror movies of a more, I guess, teen focus than Beyond the Grave. It's a source book in the sense that it doesn't have the core rules in, but that is the only thing it lacks. It has new archetypes, new cinematics, new quips, and so on and so forth, new antagonists. And now, for Classified and Cyclops' Cave, although it's leaning slightly more towards Classified, we have They Came from the Danger Zone coming, which is 1980s action movies and early 90s action movies. It turned out, when we were doing our research as writers, that a lot of the movies we were remembering, the really bad ones, were actually from about 1990 to about 1992. That's where the sort of peak dropped off and where things really start getting stupid. Now, Michele, I know you keep a catalogue of these things. Do you know at this point how many playable archetypes there are across all of the They Came Froms, including the source books that have come out?
Okay, it's 7 in Beneath the Sea. It's 8 in Beyond the Grave, plus 5 for Camp Murder Lake. It's 5 in Classified. It's 6 in Cyclops' Cave, because we are amazing. And I am allowed to say how many in Danger Zone?
Yeah.
5 more in Danger Zone.
So I think there's that 36. Yeah, unless I miscount, but it's over 30.
There are a couple coming, I think, in a testy bit or 2 that are coming, I think.
Yeah, there's another 2 coming in. They Came from Beneath the Sea, tasty bit coming very soon, which is They Came from the Bikini Beach Party. Point being, when we do source books for They Came From, we're very conscious that we don't just want this to be a director-only product. We want there to be playable content in pretty much everything we put out. It's very much a design philosophy that I abide by. I want everything to potentially be usable in the player's hands. So rest assured, if you pick up a source book for They Came From, whether you're running it or playing it, you should find something usable in there. But that's a stupid number of playable options. And the wonderful thing is, barring a couple that have some very strong crossover, Scientist and Professor, but that was very early, that's a lot of different playable options that all feel distinct to the movie genres they're from. And I think we need to trumpet that a little more, because to my mind, it's a selling point. But anyway, before we carry on then, let's have a look back at the questions that are being submitted live, and I will go back around our panelists and see whether we have any interesting answers. I'm sure we will. So I'll just scroll down. Well, Tom Murr says, is there a way to watch Garth Marenghi legally? Tried to find it streamed without success in Germany. It's on Amazon Prime over here. I think you would probably need a VPN. I don't know if VPNs are illegal by definition. But I think if you're already paying for Amazon Prime in Germany and you have a VPN that spoofs and claims you're in the UK, I'm not going to make a guess, but I know that it's on Amazon. Meredith asks, and I'm going to put this one to all three of you, so get your thinking caps on. Who is your favorite antagonist, NPC, or group from They Came From, and why? Let's start with... Who do I want to pick on who hasn't had much time to think about it? We'll go for John.
Because you know I'm sharp as a tack.
Well, exactly. When I think of you, I think prick. He's sharp as a prick.
Mine isn't actually that sharp, but that's overshaded. Anyway, the antagonist I probably have the most affinity for, I would say, is probably the prefecture of the pod. I just really like that idea of like super genius whales and dolphins that are secretly ruling the world. And I kind of use them whenever I can. I was asked to do a scenario for They Came From and immediately decided they were going in it. I think I've managed to shoehorn one of them inside of Centipus at one point. I just really like them. I just like the idea of just not that thing you always hear about, oh, humans aren't the most intelligent creatures on the planet. Just actually, well, what does that mean? You know, dolphins are more intelligent than us. Right, okay, so like they have a secret underwater city and they're trying to kill us all. That sounds legit, okay.
And that's a classic. That was one of the very first antagonists you came up with for They Came From. And
not the first. I do remember what the first one was.
Do you? What was it?
I do, because the first thing I ever wrote, and it was Brainbox, the robot.
Yes.
Actually used as a template at the time because nothing else had been written.
Yeah.
So enthusiastic John turned up and went, "Oh, here's something I've thought up." Through it.
Yeah. I remember when we were doing Beneath the Sea, in the outline, I'd done up the Aquatopilla, and was it the Brain Eater Eels? I know Bianca actually put flesh to the Brain Eater Eels, but I know the Aquatopilla was the first one. It might have been Aquatopilla and Glowing People were the ones in the outline.
Glowing People was definitely in the outline, so I think you're right.
And the Glowing People, here's an Easter egg for viewers, appear in every single They Came From. Though not always how you might expect them, but there is always a trace of the Glowing People from Beneath the Sea in every single They Came From. So, Kat, what about you? What's your favorite antagonist, NPC, or group from They Came From, or why? And why?
It's my devil-worshipping nuns. Because they let me put Nanny Og in an adventure. It let me put a range of comedy mad old women who take no shit. And that's just something I love to do. Like, you can always get a group laughing and like thoroughly taking the plot if there's a like proper character actor role in there, and they do that really well.
And the 1970s was a good decade for nunsploitation. I've raised this a few times. I'm a big fan of giallo, Italian horror. The Italians did it very well, and they obviously have no offense, Michele, but there's a certain nun fixation in Italian horror, especially of that genre. I can't think why. But it makes me think of when I was small, I had a bootleg, or my dad had a bootleg of The Devils, the Ken Russell, Oliver Reed movie, which is banned in it.
Some of us were watching My Little Pony. You were watching The Devils.
Yeah.
That explains a lot, doesn't it?
It's still banned in its uncut form, I think, globally. But yeah, that's a movie with a lot of nuns being possessed, and that certainly sent me on a path. So what about you, Michele? What's your antagonist of choice?
Well, I'll say that the Prefecture of the Pod are probably one of the MVPs of Beneath the Sea, so that's a good thing. I think probably I managed to put a giant serpent demon god in Cyclops' cave in the form of Zoaki, which is a casual fire, stuff like that, and I'm really fond of him. And he might be my favorite, but there's a contender I put into Danger Zone. My personal tribute to Skynet, Shodan, and GLaDOS. I love my version of my Air. I love Air. For now, we'll call them Air, like that.
Yeah, I mean, heavily teasing, if not dropping information from They Came from the Danger Zone, but Michele's Skynet essentially offspring that appear with all of their various code names are a great pleasure of mine in that book. So yeah, you've got them to look forward to. They're incredibly well written. They're not just Easter eggs either. They are really interesting antagonists. For me, my favorite antagonist, for media reference, probably the stepfather in Camp Murder Lake, because I'm the only person who likes the movie upon which it's based. And but otherwise, I don't have much of a reason for that. There's so many that I love in Classified. Because we've written every single one of them up like a sort of case file bio. Now, listen here, agent, this one's a real deadly assassin. You know, you want to be covering your 6 while this one's coming after you. I love the Grey Five, which is basically a group of 5 hotshot assassins. No one knows their identity, but they all have a specific preference for how they murder people. And there's a wonderful piece of Derwin Talon art in Classified, a full pager, which is the Grey Five. And all of their faces, they've got black bars over them, so you can't see who they are. But underneath them, they've all got different sorts of hazard symbols like corrosion, explosion, and things like that. And I think it's just wonderful. It sets my mind going. So that's my answer. And because I'm enjoying these questions so much, we'll now go for the one with the fixed answer. Andrea Leora, can't think who this is, asks, who is your favorite They Came From artist and why is it me? John, I know you're the one who'll give the most most unbiased opinion here.
It's Payne. Whack him.
It is Andrea Payne.
It is definitely Andrea Payne. Hi, Andrea. Hello. So she's taking a break from playing D&D with me to come and ask me questions. She's up there. The artist that did this particular piece.
That's Derwin. That's Derwin Talon.
So yeah, to be honest, I think the art style in general in They Came From games is great, just because of how evocative it is of the genres of. It's not even just like overused movie poster style. It's like, no, it's not just that. It's evocative of the genres that they represent. Like if you look at the artwork for Classified, which I also really liked, it's very different from what you see in Beyond the Grave in terms of its execution, and it just fits perfectly for the style of what's been used.
Yeah. I'm not actually going to ask everyone to pick Andrea. But Andrea's work is fantastic. Larry Blameyer's work is fantastic. I think when most people think of They Came From, they think of, well, the cover for Beneath the Sea, which is a Larry piece. All of the full pages in Beneath the Sea are. He also wrote on a lot of our books as well, of course, and as John mentioned earlier, directed Lost Skeleton of Cadavra, among other movies. Derwin Talon, who we've mentioned, is the artist who's done the full pages for Beyond the Grave and Classified. And we also have Ken Meyer Jr., who is a mainstay of Onyx Path books, did some of the Tales of Depravity fulls. I just love the one for the scenario Get Back, the Wrath of Red Clay, which is a blaxploitation horror movie. Now, what's going on in this picture is what makes me love it, because there is no reason for it. It's a Detroit-based slasher, and there's a rhino charging towards the viewer next to our sassy protagonists. And the reason that's there is because when I was doing research for art direction for blaxploitation movies, I found an alarming number that just had random wild animals coming towards the viewer. And I thought, well, we need one. There's no rhino that appears in the scenario. It's just in the art. So let's think. I'll do one more, then we'll get back onto the agenda. And this is a nice quick one. Simulacra TV says, is there any They Came From material to spoof Hellraiser? And there is. Once again, in Camp Murder Lake, we have the pleasure demons, and as a special rule of pleasure demons, we have Pangels, which is honestly my favorite piece of writing I've ever done, just coming up with the word Pangel. It's a very, very quick one, really. The thing that I really liked about the Pangels, I'll do a bit of reading, is says, on rare occasions, a summoner draws the attention of Pangels instead of pleasure demons, and that rarely goes well. Pangels aren't interested in coaxing pleasure from their targets, only tremendous pain, and they don't always arrive due to the typical carnal summoning. A stubbed toe, followed by a blasphemous exclamation of pain, such as, Jesus Christ, motherfucking son of a bitch, is as sufficient a ritual as a ritual accompanied by sadistic practices. So I just love the idea of a scenario where someone stubs their toe and is there swearing, cradling their foot, and all of a sudden the walls start opening up. The pages
open the box.
Yes, you called our names. No, I just stubbed my toe. You cannot send us back.
Do you get the same Pangel though, or is it like a work experience Pangel that shows up for that?
I like the idea it's the same Pangel each time who rolls their eyes after, oh, you stood on Lego this time, didn't you?
I actually think it's a good idea about that movie.
Just get rid of the D4s, man.
That's a rom-com waiting to happen, basically.
No, surely the curtain should roll back to reveal the Pangel with another customer sort of going, I'll get to you, just hold on. Then the walls close again, you know.
Not another toe stubbing.
We get away with it this time.
So we've one of the things I wanted to discuss is also, and it's another question for the group, if you could adapt any movie of one movie of any They Came From genre into a scenario source book. Imagine you got to write an entire scenario based on one movie that already exists. What do you think would work for role-playing within that They Came From setting? Kat?
Leprechaun, no further comment.
That's a nice quick answer. It's a classic.
I don't think it needs explanation.
No, it's a
Leprechaun
dubious
is basically
classic.
already a They Came From scenario.
Yeah. Because it feels stupid. It's a bit like Basket Case.
Exactly.
I put Basket Case in that same area. How about you, Michaeli?
That's a difficult one.
We can come back to you if you want.
Yes, thank you.
All right, John.
We came back to you from beneath the answer. So I like the Leprechaun. That was a good answer. Unfortunately, it was wrong, because the correct answer is the Golden Child, because it has everything. It has everything, right? There's nothing in that movie that doesn't exist to some extent in basically every They Came From game, right? It covers all the bases. It's got claymation for a start, right? It's got a demon invasion from another plane of existence. It's got action. It's got comedy. It's got everything, you know. It's even got the guy's like a cop who finds children and stuff like that. So it's a bit of classified, a bit of martial arts. It has all the bases, and it has Eddie Murphy. What more do you want than his bizarre laugh, which is clearly invented for his own strange comedic purposes?
So, Michaeli, you've had a bit of time to think.
Yes.
What's it going to be?
We'll go with Big Trouble in Little China for similar reason to the Golden Child.
Yeah.
It has a bit of all the lines in there.
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll go with that. I mean, I could very easily, for the 1950s ones, I could point at any B movie because Beneath the Sea is, in a sense, the simplest of They Came Froms by concept. It's aliens invade small town. What are you gonna do? But for me, it's a movie that I recently rediscovered because of Danger Zone, and it's Stone Cold, which is an action movie from 1991, which it's cheap and yet explosions abound. Lance Henriksen is in it to dubious effect. And it has everything from bikers to strip clubs to automatic weapons to car chases to helicopters exploding to falling through skylights. It is, for me, even more than the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies we were most keenly looking at when we started working on Danger Zone, the most Danger Zone game, because it also feels so damn cheap. So Stone Cold would be my answer there. What else do we have here? Let's see. So let's talk about things to look forward to in Classified, Cyclops, and Danger Zone. So these are our upcoming books. Obviously, all the rest are available on Drive-Thru RPG and in print in the form of Beneath the Sea and Beyond the Grave. But let's go down the line from people who have worked on each. We'll go to Kat first, if I may, for Classified. If you were to sell someone on Classified, what would you be selling them on? What would you be telling them is so great about it?
Oh, I think my favorite bit of Classified is Eddie Webb's Director's Chair chapter, because the spy genre is huge. And we're covering everything from Bond to the Avengers to Archer in there. And it's just an expert guide to tweaking the tone of your game.
Very
and
nice.
Also, it taught me to write the scenario that I did for Classified. So it works. It does the job.
Michaela, I'm afraid I'm going to be very boring and ask you to describe Cyclops and how you would sell that. But I also think you're the most qualified person to do so.
It's my baby after all. I'll say that in Cyclops' Cave, we managed to push things forward when it goes to the archetypes that Kim Godwin wrote, and all the tropes, all the power there allow you to cover a lot of ground in the fantasy genre, and the cinematics that Roma Ikota did which are both the standard cinematics as much as they can be, and the magical effects that break the budget from the special effect department are really sharp, and they are a wonderful way to have fantasy of all sorts happen at your table.
Lovely. Well, I know how affectionate you are for Cyclops, and you've got every reason to be. It's a lovely child. Its singular forehead-based eyeball is nothing to be ashamed of. That's all.
Well, I hope that it will do well, because I have new books to pitch. John Burke's to hire for them, so
well, exactly. Many John Burkes. They're coming off a factory line at this point. And John, Danger Zone. Danger Zone is the latest one you've worked on. What would you say are the big selling points of an action movie game like this?
Like all the great action stars, John Burke is back, and he has written an incredible scenario for this game. No, I would say that, because blowing my own trumpet is part of my charm. But what I would also say is these are my favourite movies of all time. They are what I go to when I'm sad, when I'm bored, whenever anything is happening at all. Any situation, in fact, I can throw on one of these movies, and that game represents that. It is complete popcorn-tastic. You can consume it at any time of day. It is 100% for your enjoyment, and that's my favourite thing about They Came From games in general. And I think Danger Zone, for me, certainly what I've seen of it so far, absolutely epitomises that it is entirely for the player's enjoyment, and you will see that the writers enjoyed themselves just as much when they were creating it.
And again, not just to tease, but to drop some of John's content. We will have a scenario coming up in Danger Zone that is essentially Master Chef or Iron Chef in an action movie where your characters have to go deep undercover as chefs in a cooking competition and cook. They have to still do well in the cooking competition to get closer to the villain. So it's very much not what you'd expect. It's the first 15 minutes of Under Siege spread to an hour and 15 minutes until the action starts.
all based on the movie Kindergarten Cop.
None of the actual threatening stuff happens until close to the end. It's there to subvert expectations. No, there is action stuff in there too, but I'm very much looking forward to it because it has the right tone we're looking for with Danger Zone. I guess this is always the killer question that comes up in pretty much every They Came From panel. I think I did see someone ask it earlier, so I'll ask it now. What kind of They Came From would you want to create if you could choose any genre at all? And now I'm going to be a bit specific here with you three, because I don't want something that you can do as a source book to an existing one. I want you to think, is there any mine left for us to plumb for core books? So it's a big question. John, you're nodding enthusiastically, so I'm guessing you've got an idea.
I've had an idea for a while. I think I've actually already told you. And I don't know if I should tell anyone this because I was going to pitch this.
Well, don't then.
And the pitch that I'm working on is going to be sensational. But let's just say it involves a lot of what you've seen already to some extent, but not from the perspective that you have seen before. And I think it would be very much fun for everyone and be a much grander campaign setting than you're used to from They Came From.
Oh, okay. Oh, mysterious. All right. And Michaeli?
I was going to say the kaiju one for Beneath the Sea, but you blocked me there. So no giant monsters for me. I'm still going to pitch that, so you'll have to deal with that and refuse eventually if that's the case.
Okay. All right.
For a whole different genre, I think we can go with pirates, which is not exactly Beneath the Sea. It's not exactly Beyond the Grave, and it's also a cool one I'd like to have happen sometime or somewhere along the line. But my kaiju one comes first.
Yeah, kaiju comes first. And Kat, how about you?
God damn it, Michaela, I was going to say pirates.
See, everyone likes pirate movies.
And it's totally not because our flag means death, just lives rent-free in my head, honest.
Yeah.
I think we should do a swashbuckling one more broadly than pirates, because I reckon we need some Three Musketeers and some fan-waving, intriguing, and some daring-do. I don't think we've got that covered anywhere yet.
All right, well, I would probably go... So for the longest time, I would think Western. But I vacillate on that very much. The one that I'm thinking about most closely at this time would be period drama, because obviously there's Downton Abbey, obviously there's Bridgerton. I found my wife the other day watching something called Somerton or something like that. Apparently they all end in ton, all these English West Country estates. And I think
it goes to the ton, Matthew.
Well, they do, don't they? Said they're never in ton, they're outside of ton. Yes, so it would be something like They Came From Ton. But probably with a better name than that. And I think if you set it Regency era, you could probably have a bit of that swashbuckly, piratey, maybe. Well, certainly maybe a bit more Master and Commander.
Yeah, you could slide it backwards into, Dangerous Liaisons.
Yeah.
But, not so sad.
That They Came From a dashing and romantic period, maybe. I don't know.
I think what's really missing from
They came from the Orangery.
They came from Hugh Grant's clearly unaffordable Notting Hill flat, which is out of the price range of a small bookstore owner who never sells a single book. Maybe a lengthy title, but that sort of.
They came from Richard Curtis's back pocket.
Pretty much, yes. They came from the mind of this guy. And ultimately, romance games are becoming popular. God knows why. But there you go. No, they are becoming popular. And I think you could have something like that. You've talked about the goal not being about kill the monster or kill the villain. And you could make it more about get the girl, despite all the crises and things that are thrown your way.
Or get the gentleman. You'd get or just, I don't know, get away with a fortune. I think there's a lot of...
I'm not sure how you would write it, but I think it could be an interesting proposition. So someone pitch that while I pitch this other thing.
All right, I'll pitch
Mr. Darcy.
Yes. Okay, so what else have we got? I think at this point we will, as we are wrapping up, nearing the end of our panel, we're not quite there yet, we will look purely to the audience. And just before I do so, submit your questions now. Submit your questions now, because now is the time to ask them. I'm going to say that right now, there are no other big they came froms on the immediate horizon. We're concentrating on Danger Zone and we're getting Classified and Cyclops' Cave finished. There will still be tasty bits coming out throughout the year, of course, for all of the they came froms as they do. So lots of source books really bulking up this game line, quite frankly. So don't fret. There is more they came from coming. It's just we want to get the things that are currently on the schedule done first. Nevertheless, if there's something you want to see, the best thing you can do is tell us. You know, if there's enough of a groundswell of interest in they came from Devil's Gulch Western game, then we can look at that again. But we shall see. We shall see. So while I say that, please, of course, spend the time after this panel going on Drive-Thru-RPG and buying a They Came From game. If you've already got all the core books, pick up a source book. If you've already got all the source books, pick up a tasty bit. They only cost $3, and it does really help us with a They Came From line. It's not the biggest role-playing game line in the world. It's never going to topple D&D, but it's still a game that is proving to be popular at conventions and also still needs your vocal support for it to thrive. And part of that comes in buying copies and leaving reviews, telling people that they're so much fun. So please go ahead and do that if you possibly can. So let's see, what other questions do we have in the chat? Oh, good Lord, there's actually a lot. So how do you bring specific sequel angles to They Came From? What, set in space, Shadows by Firelight? I don't think it's terribly difficult to set an existing They Came From in space, on a space station, Friday the 13th, you know, in Jason and X, all that, a Leprechaun in space. I think to make it really work, though, it would be nice to have a source book, even if it's a small one, like a tasty bit that has some cinematics and quips that deal with technobabble, things like being airlocked, things like coolant leaks, you know, the usual kind of space station hazards. I don't think you'd need an entire core book for that kind of thing, but I think, you know, you could bolt that on to any They Came From and it would function. So we've got lots of people pitching different They Came Froms. We've got They Came From Pirates, They Came From Behind the Brothel, says Zach. I'm not sure what kind of movie that would be.
Maybe the word from needs removed from that title.
They Came From the Crimson Coast. I like that Simulacra TV. I might steal that. 90s high school movies. They came... that's...
Murder Lake does that.
I feel Camp Murder Lake does it. Just take the murder out and you're pretty much already there. Spanish telenovela, very specific. That would be ultra-specific source book that I'm not sure would sell in great numbers.
I really like that idea, but I absolutely could not write it.
They're very melodramatic. They Came From the Estate. That could be read either way in Britain, certainly. The estate doesn't necessarily always mean you've come from a good part of town. Kung Fu movies, asked Andrea. That is being covered in They Came From the Danger Zone. Martial arts are in there. They Came For Your Loot for pirates. We've got a lot of arguments over pirates. They Came From the Ancient Dojo, appearing in Danger Zone. Superheroes, They Came From the Pages of a Comic Book. So that's an interesting one, Elves of Zion. We haven't really covered superheroes yet. To a degree, they're present in Danger Zone. The main I've considered superheroes before, comic books before, and I think the main barrier is most superhero universes are so broad, and one of the things that really defines superhero role-playing games is the sheer array of powers and different kinds of characters you can play. And what that means is archetypes get broken up very, very easily. They came from is rather, and I don't mean to say this as a sort of weakening thing, but it's very locked to genre archetypes. I wouldn't want people to feel cheated because there are no powers for super speed, or because you can't play Dr. Alchemy, or you can't play Darkman, or whatever your superhero question may be. And because there's so many ways into superhero movies, that's always what's stopped me. But never say never. A Doctor Who inspired supplement when? Oh, well, keep watching the skies on that. I'm not sure which one of the They Came From's Doctor Who would match. Maybe one of you can come up with an idea there. I guess they could work on any, because he time travels. He could fit in any of them. So let's we have reached time, so I'm going to do 3 more questions. Kat, any way to put the World of Darkness twist and play the antagonists in They Came From?
Yes, as long as they're clueless and bumbling and constantly fighting against their own foolishness. That's how.
That is exactly it. I think a lot of people see They Came From, especially Beyond the Grave, and they think this is a horror game. And it is a horror game, but it still has that vein of comedy. And you need it, I think, for it to feel like They Came From. So yeah, your protagonists cannot be fully effective, deeply personally traumatized monsters like they can in World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness, because that's what those games are for. Qatar SR asks you, Michaeli, are all the They Came From taking place in the same world, just different times?
No, it depends on the movie production that takes off that movie. I don't know. Some might be Warner, some might be Indies. So it's all different stuff and crossovers and stuff like Sony having vampires that go more in our complicate things even further.
Yeah, we sometimes put teasers between books, like the glowing people I mentioned. I think in Classified, when you're being briefed in the introduction, the person says, "Do you remember that shocker with zombie Stalin or something like that?" We try to suppress that piece of information, reference to Beneath the Sea, but by and large, we're not crossing over. But these games are eminently crossoverable. I think if I can finish this, if I can finish this panel in any way, it is to say that They Came From games are designed mechanically so that they all interlace with each other. There's no strong meta plot bonding them. You can come up with that yourself if you want one. What it does have is a mechanical system in the form of story path, cinematics, quips, tropes, stunts that are universal, in the sense that you could put an everyman from Beneath the Sea in a Murder Lake game. You could put an adventurer from Classified in Beyond the Grave. You can basically do all this, and you can transport all of their powers with them, and it doesn't break anything. It works perfectly well. Now, some characters, Beneath the Sea characters, were actually writ large in the sense that they have a greater capacity to do damage and take damage than the archetypes in other games, and that was by design. But in terms of balance, we don't really care that much about balance. In They Came From, us about making it feel like a movie. Yes. In short, if you buy 2 They Came From games, start populating them with monsters from one into the other, archetypes from one into the other. When we mentioned there's something like 36 archetypes that are playable, that's 36 archetypes you can play in one game if you want. It works. It really does. So with that said, we've run over time because of course we have. I'm going to let everyone say goodbye, drop their social media info, and you can promote one thing each. Let's start with you, John. Where can people find you and what should they buy if they want to support you or generally tell you they love your work?
Generally speaking, you'll find me on Twitter at JohnPBurke82, which is the year I was born. I'm going to be 40 this year, oh no. And if you want to support me, buy a John Burke scarf, hold it over your head and sing You'll Never Burke Alone. But if you're refusing to do that, then yeah, buy any They Came From game and I will be delighted.
And Michaeli?
You can find me at the Onyx Path Discord. I hang there, and if you speak about They Came From, there are odds you'll summon me there. You can also find me at Ghost of Cinders on Twitter. You probably see you can find me under my name here. And I'll agree with John and say that any They Came From you buy helps us to make more, so that's a good thing and all I want to happen in the future. So go buy games. And
what about you, Kat?
Yeah, come find me and ask me more questions at Perpetual Gloom on Twitter, or go check out ecstaticgames.com. But I don't even want you to buy something. I just want you to play They Came From games and leave reviews and tell us all how cool and clever we are.
Thank you.
We need it.
Yeah, yeah, but we want the praise. We deserve it, damn it. We put a lot of work into these things. Show your gratitude. My name is Matthew Dawkins. You can find me on social media at DawkinsMP. You can find all the games I've worked on at MatthewDawkins.com. You can also find links to buy all of them on MatthewDawkins.com. And what's more, if you click on those links to buy your games, I will get a little bit of money from it because I've got an affiliate link with DriveThruRPG. I recommend any creator sets that up. All you have to do is get in touch with DriveThruRPG. They can do that. But most importantly, I'm going to sign off by saying they came from Classified and they came from the Cyclops Cave. While their Kickstarter may have ended, they are still available for pre-order on backer kits, which means you can still buy them in traditionally printed form at this early stage pre-release. So if you didn't back them on Kickstarter, and I know several people that didn't because they didn't understand it was a double feature Kickstarter, I don't want both games, I only want one or the other, you can buy them individually or together on the backer kit. So look up They Came From, it's probably easier to type in They Came From Classified backer kit into Google. You will find it. Back one game, back both games. We will be incredibly grateful to you. And thank you very much, Jinx, for praising my videos. Don't hear much about them these days, but it's always nice to find someone that found me through them. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll wave off now as we get shut off. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.